Tyler Wilson's heart raced as he realized his inadvertent proposition to Spica, the Kobali female, to eat his breeding muscle. The diplomatic dinner between human and Kobali representatives froze in shocked silence. I didn't mean, Tyler stammered, face flushing as the gravity of his mistake sank in. Years of careful diplomacy hung in the balance, threatening humanity's access to vital Kobali technology needed to defend Earth against an impending alien invasion. The xenobiologist had simply attempted to compliment the Kobali cuisine, asking Spica if she'd like to try a particularly muscular cut of meat, but the universal translator had other ideas, converting eat to the Kobali word for sexual intercourse and muscular cut of meat to breeding muscle, a Kobali euphemism for reproductive organs. Spica's eyes widened, her normally pale blue skin flushing a deep indigo. She stood abruptly, her chair screeching against the polished floor. "How dare you?" she hissed, her translator conveying her outrage perfectly. "Is this how humans conduct themselves in formal settings?" The Kobali delegation murmured in disapproval. Ambassador Zorn, the human representative, shot Tyler a withering glare. "Mr. Wilson, what is the meaning of this?" he demanded. Tyler's mind raced. He had to fix this, and fast. The Human-Kobali alliance couldn't afford such a misunderstanding, not with Earth's safety at stake. "There's been a mistake," he began, but Spica had already stormed out of the dining hall, leaving a wake of confused and angry Kobali in her path. As the dinner dissolved into chaos, Tyler's superiors pulled him aside. "We're considering recalling you to Earth," his department head growled. "Do you understand what you've done?" Tyler nodded, his stomach churning. "I do, sir. But please, let me stay and fix this. If we don't salvage this relationship, Earth will be defenseless against the coming invasion." After a tense discussion, they agreed to let Tyler try to mend the rift. But as he prepared to meet with Spica privately, reports came flooding in of growing anti-human sentiment among conservative Kobali factions. They viewed the perceived sexual proposition as a deliberate insult to their culture. Meanwhile, the incident had exposed a critical flaw in human Kobali translation technology. An emergency review of all previous diplomatic communications was underway, searching for potential misunderstandings that could further jeopardize the alliance. As Tyler stood outside Spica's quarters, rehearsing his apology, he was unaware that the Kobali female had developed a genuine curiosity about human mating practices. The misunderstanding had sparked an interest she'd never experienced before. Tyler took a deep breath and knocked on Spica's door. The fate of two worlds hung on his ability to navigate the complex Kobali social customs and explain the embarrassing mix-up. As the door slid open, revealing Spica's conflicted expression, Tyler steeled himself for the most important conversation of his life, and possibly the most crucial moment in human-Kobali relations. The door slid open, revealing Spica's conflicted expression. Tyler's carefully rehearsed apology died on his lips as she gestured for him to enter her quarters. "Ambassador Wilson," Spica said, her voice tinged with a mix of emotions Tyler couldn't quite decipher. "I believe we have much to discuss." Tyler stepped inside, noting the sparse, utilitarian decor of the Kobali living space. "Spica, I cannot express how deeply sorry I am for the misunderstanding at dinner. The universal translator malfunctioned, and my words were..." "Proposing sexual intercourse," Spica finished, her indigo skin flushing slightly. "Yes, I'm aware of the error now. Our technicians identified the glitch shortly after I left the dining hall." Tyler blinked, surprised by her calm demeanor. "Then you understand it was unintentional?" Spica nodded, moving closer to Tyler. "I do, and I must admit the incident has sparked curiosity in me." Her eyes met his, filled with an intensity that made Tyler's breath catch. "I find myself intrigued by human mating practices. Perhaps you could elaborate?" Before Tyler could formulate a response, an ear-piercing alarm shattered the moment. Red lights pulsed throughout the room as a computerized voice blared in both Kobali and English. "Alert! Hostile fleet detected. Prilorian's vessels approaching Kobali space. This is not a drill. All personnel report to defensive stations immediately." Tyler and Spica exchanged shocked glances. "The Prilorians?" Tyler gasped. "But our intelligence suggested they were years away from reaching this sector." They must have developed new propulsion technology, Spica said, her professional demeanor snapping back into place. We need to get to the command center. As they raced through the corridors of the Kabali complex, Tyler's mind whirled with possibilities. The diplomatic tensions between humans and Kabali seemed trivial now in the face of this new threat. They burst into the command center, finding it already a hive of frantic activity. Counselor Vex, Spica's father, and a senior member of the Kabali High Council, looked up from a holographic display of the approaching fleet. His eyes narrowed at the sight of Tyler. "What is the human doing here?" he demanded. Tyler stepped forward, his voice steady despite the chaos around them. "Counselor, I believe I can help. Earth has been developing advanced stealth technology that might be able to hide your planet from the Prilorian sensors." Vex's expression remained skeptical, but Spica interjected, "Father, we should hear him out. The Prilorians outgun us significantly. We need every advantage we can get." After a tense moment, Vex nodded. "Explain your plan, human." Tyler outlined his proposal to create a massive cloaking field around the Kabali homeworld. As he spoke, he could see the Kabali leader's initial skepticism giving way to cautious hope. When he finished, there was a moment of silence broken only by the continued blare of alarms. "It's a bold plan," Vex said finally, "but we have no other viable options." "Very well, Ambassador Wilson. We'll proceed with your strategy." The next hours were a blur of activity as Tyler worked alongside Kabali engineers to implement the cloaking technology. He found himself repeatedly turning to Spica, whose brilliance in xenobiology proved invaluable in adapting the human tech to Kabali systems. As they worked, Tyler couldn't help but notice the growing ease between them. The awkwardness from their earlier encounter had transformed into a comfortable camaraderie born of shared purpose and mutual respect. "You're full of surprises, Ambassador," Spica said as they calibrated a particularly tricky piece of equipment. "I never would have guessed you had such extensive technical knowledge." Tyler smiled, enjoying the warmth in her voice. "I could say the same about you. Your grasp of interspecies biological systems is remarkable." Their eyes met, and for a moment the urgency of their task faded into the background. Then a Kabali technician called out, "We're detecting an anomaly in the Prilorians' approach vector." The moment shattered as they rushed to analyze the new data. Tyler's stomach dropped as he realized the implications. "They're using some kind of advanced FTL drive," he said, his voice tight. "Our current cloaking configuration won't be enough." Spica's face set in purpose. "Then we'll have to adapt. We've come too far to fail now." As they worked feverishly to recalibrate the cloaking field, reports came in from Earth. Ambassador Sarah Chen had managed to secure support from several alien races, but others remained hesitant to provoke the Prilorians. Time seemed to blur as Tyler and Spica pushed themselves to the limit, their shared passion for science driving them to new heights of innovation. In quiet moments between frantic calculations and system adjustments, they found themselves sharing personal stories, fears, and hopes for the future. "I never thought I'd find myself defending an alien world alongside a species I barely knew a month ago," Tyler admitted during one such lull. Spica's hand brushed his, sending an unexpected tingle through his arm. "Life has a way of surprising us," she said softly. "I'm glad you're here, Tyler." Before he could respond, alarms blared once again. The first wave of the Prilorians' fleet had entered the system. "It's now or never," Tyler said, locking eyes with Spica. They rushed to the central control panel, initiating the modified cloaking field. Energy surged through the planet-wide network of emitters they had painstakingly constructed. On the main view screen, the massive shapes of Prilorians' warships appeared, their weapons already charging. Tyler held his breath, acutely aware of the billions of lives hanging in the balance. Would their efforts be enough? The lead Prilorian ship fired, its energy beam lancing towards the Kabali homeworld. It struck the cloaking field and dissipated harmlessly. A cheer went up from the Kabali operators. Tyler exhaled sharply, relief flooding through him. But he knew this was only the beginning. The real test would come when the Prilorians realized their target had vanished. As if reading his thoughts, Spica squeezed his hand. "We've bought ourselves time," she said. "Now we need to figure out how to drive them away for good." Tyler nodded, his mind already racing with possibilities. The Prilorians' threat had brought humans and Kabali together in ways he never could have imagined. Whatever challenges lay ahead, he was certain of one thing. They would face them united. Tyler's mind raced as he watched the Prilorians' fleet enter the system. The massive warships loomed ominously on the screen, their weapons already charging. He held his breath, acutely aware of the billions of lives hanging in the balance. The lead Prilorian ship fired, its energy beam lancing towards the Kabali homeworld. It struck the cloaking field and dissipated harmlessly. A cheer erupted from the Kabali operators. Tyler exhaled sharply, relief flooding through him. But he knew this was only the beginning. The real test would come when the Prilorians realized their target had vanished. As if reading his thoughts, Spica squeezed his hand. "We've bought ourselves time," she said. "Now we need to figure out how to drive them away for good." Tyler nodded, his mind already racing with possibilities. The Prilorians' threat had brought humans and Kabali together in ways he never could have imagined. Whatever challenges lay ahead, he was certain of one thing. They would face them united. Hours passed as the Prilorian ships entered a holding pattern, searching in vain for their hidden target. Tyler paced the command center, studying the enemy fleet's movements. An idea began to form in his mind, risky but potentially game-changing. "Counselor Vex," Tyler said, approaching the Kabali leader, "I believe I have a way to gather critical intelligence on the Prilorians." Vex's eyes narrowed. "Explain, human." Tyler outlined his plan to pilot a small, human-designed stealth craft on a reconnaissance mission. "Our technology is different from yours," he explained. "There's a chance I could get close enough to their ships to gather valuable data." The Kabali military leaders present immediately voiced their objections. "It's too dangerous," one argued. "We can't risk exposing our position." Spica stepped forward, her eyes locked on Tyler. "But if it works, we could gain a significant advantage." Vex considered for a long moment, his gaze moving between Tyler and his daughter. Finally, he nodded. "Very well, Ambassador Wilson. You have my approval. But understand the risk you're taking." As Tyler prepared for the mission, Spica approached him in a quiet corner of the hangar bay. Her indigo skin seemed to shimmer under the harsh lights. "Tyler," she said softly, "I want you to have this." She pressed a small object into his hand. Tyler looked down to see a tiny crystal, pulsing with a soft blue glow. "What is it?" he asked, mesmerized by its beauty. "A Kabali good luck charm," Spica explained. "It's bioluminescent, responsive to the owner's emotional state." She hesitated, then added, "So I'll know you're safe." Tyler's throat tightened with emotion. He carefully tucked the crystal into his flight suit next to his heart. "Thank you, Spica. I'll bring it back to you, I promise." Moments later, Tyler's stealth craft slipped out of the Kabali hangar, cloaked and undetectable. He maneuvered carefully through the Prilorians' fleet, his heart pounding as he passed within meters of the massive warships. As he approached the enemy flagship, Tyler's sensors began picking up valuable data. He leaned forward, eyes widening as he realized the significance of what he was seeing. "They're all communicating on the same frequency," he muttered. "If we could disrupt that—" Suddenly, alarms blared in his cockpit. Tyler's stomach dropped as he realized his cloaking device was malfunctioning. On his view screen, he saw Prilorian ships turning towards him, weapons powering up. "No, no, no," Tyler growled, his hands flying over the controls. He sent his ship into a series of wild, evasive maneuvers, narrowly avoiding energy beams that lanced through space around him. A glancing hit rocked his craft, sending sparks flying from a control panel. Tyler gritted his teeth, fighting to maintain control of his damaged ship. He managed to put some distance between himself and the pursuing Prilorians' vessels, but he knew he couldn't outrun them for long. With a silent prayer, he activated his emergency transmitter, sending a burst of data back to the Kabali homeworld. "I hope that got through," he muttered, watching his fuel reserves dwindle. As his ship drifted into a dense debris field, Tyler powered down all non-essential systems. The crystal Spica had given him pulsed softly in the darkness, its glow somehow comforting. Back on the Kabali homeworld, Spica burst into the command center, clutching a datapad. "We've received a transmission from Tyler," she announced breathlessly. He's discovered a critical weakness in the Prilorians' communication systems. As Spica led a team in analyzing the data, Counselor Vex approached her. "Your human friend has shown great courage," he said, his tone softer than usual. "We will do everything in our power to bring him home safely." Spica nodded, grateful for her father's support. She glanced down at a small device on her wrist, linked to the crystal she had given Tyler. Its pulsing blue light told her he was still alive, but the erratic rhythm suggested he was in danger. "Hang on, Tyler," she whispered. "We're coming for you." On Earth, Ambassador Sarah Chen received Tyler's intelligence report. Her eyes widened as she realized its implications. Without hesitation, she contacted the highest levels of Earth's military command. "We need to deploy our battle group to the Kobali system immediately," she insisted. "This is our chance to prove our commitment to our allies and strike a decisive blow against the Prilorians." As Earth ships prepared to jump to FTL, the situation in the Kobali system grew more desperate. Frustrated by their inability to locate their target, the Prilorians began firing long-range weapons indiscriminately into the system. Tyler, still adrift in his damaged craft, watched in horror as energy beams and missiles streaked past. He knew he couldn't stay hidden forever. With no other choice, he fired up his engines and aimed his ship towards the Kobali atmosphere. "This is going to be rough," he muttered, gripping the controls tightly. The crystal pulsed rapidly against his chest as his ship hit the upper atmosphere, flames licking at the hull. On the planet's surface, Spica led a rescue team towards Tyler's calculated landing zone. The crystal on her wrist glowed brighter than ever, filling her with hope. "We're almost there, Tyler," she said, her eyes scanning the sky. "Just hold on a little longer." As Tyler's ship streaked through the atmosphere, rescue teams raced across the Kobali landscape. The fate of two worlds hung in the balance, along with the blossoming connection between a human diplomat and a Kobali scientist. In the command center, Counselor Vex watched the unfolding events with a mixture of anxiety and newfound respect for their human allies. The crystal in Spica's hand pulsed with vibrant energy, a testament to Tyler's indomitable spirit and the power of their unlikely alliance. As she watched the fiery trail of his ship descend towards the horizon, Spica knew that whatever happened next would change the course of human-Kobali relations forever. The fiery trail of Tyler's ship streaked across the Kobali sky, a blazing comet heralding either salvation or disaster. Spica's eyes locked onto the plummeting craft, her heart pounding in sync with the pulsing crystal in her hand. The rescue team's vehicles sped across the vast Kobali plain, racing against time and physics to reach the calculated landing zone. Inside the craft, Tyler gritted his teeth as he wrestled with the failing controls. Warning lights flashed across his console, and the ship's frame groaned under the stress of atmospheric entry. He activated the emergency landing systems, praying the advanced shock-absorbing mechanisms would be enough to save him from a fiery demise. Come on," he muttered, pulling back on the controls with all his strength. The ground rushed up to meet him, an endless expanse of alien terrain that threatened to become his final resting place. At the last possible moment, Tyler managed to level out the ship's descent. It slammed into the surface with bone-jarring force, skidding across the plain in a shower of sparks and debris. The shock-absorbing systems strained to their limits, bleeding off the craft's momentum as it carved a deep furrow into the Kobali soil. When the ship finally ground to a halt, an eerie silence fell over the plain. Spica's team arrived moments later, their vehicles kicking up clouds of dust as they screeched to a stop. Spica leapt from her transport before it had fully stopped, sprinting towards the smoking wreckage. "Tyler!" she called out, her voice tinged with desperation. "Tyler, can you hear me?" As she reached the ship, Spica could see Tyler slumped in the cockpit, blood trickling from a gash on his forehead. Her heart seemed to stop for a moment before she noticed the slight rise and fall of his chest. He was alive, but barely. "Over here!" she shouted to her team. "We need to get him out now." The Kobali rescue team swarmed the wreckage, using advanced cutting tools to pry open the twisted metal. Spica supervised their efforts, her medical training kicking in as she assessed Tyler's condition. When they finally pulled him free, she immediately began applying Kobali medical technology to stabilize him. A handheld device pulsed with soft blue light, as Spica ran it over Tyler's body, knitting together broken bones and stemming internal bleeding. Tyler's eyelids fluttered, and he let out a low groan. "Spica?" he murmured, his voice barely audible. "I'm here, Tyler," she replied, relief washing over her. "You're going to be all right. We're taking you back to the capital." As they loaded Tyler onto a medical transport, Spica noticed something glowing beneath his tattered flight suit. She carefully extracted the bioluminescent crystal she had given him, its light pulsing strongly in response to Tyler's emotions. Despite his injuries, the crystal's vibrant glow spoke volumes about his resilience and the depth of their connection. The journey back to the capital was tense, with Spica monitoring Tyler's vital signs and administering additional treatment as needed. As they approached the city, the sky above erupted in flashes of light. The human battle group had arrived. Admiral James Hawthorne's fleet dropped out of FTL on the outskirts of the Kobali system, their sensors immediately locking onto the Prilorians' armada. On the bridge of the flagship, Hawthorne studied the tactical display with steely perseverance. "Deploy the jamming satellites," he ordered. "Let's put Ambassador Wilson's intelligence to good use." A swarm of specialized satellites launched from the human ships, quickly positioning themselves around the Prilorians' fleet. At Hawthorne's command, they activated, flooding the specific frequency used by the Prilorians with a cacophony of interference. The effect was almost immediate. The once orderly formation of Prilorian ships began to break apart, their coordinated movements devolving into chaos. Hawthorne allowed himself a small smile. "Now's our chance. All ships, prepare to engage." On the Kobali homeworld, Counselor Vex watched the unfolding battle with a mixture of hope and trepidation. The humans had proven their worth, but would it be enough? Making a decision that would alter the course of the war, he turned to his advisors. "Drop the planetary cloak," he commanded. "It's time we join this fight alongside our human allies." As the massive cloaking field dissipated, Vex activated a communication channel to Admiral Hawthorne. "Admiral, this is Counselor Vex. The Kobali stand ready to fight. We have a weapon that may turn the tide of this battle." Hawthorne's holographic image appeared before Vex, surprise evident on his face. "Counselor, we're honored to fight alongside you. What kind of weapon are we talking about?" Vex's expression was grim but determined. "An ion cannon of unprecedented power, capable of disabling entire enemy vessels. We've kept it secret until now, but the time has come to use it." As Vex coordinated with Hawthorne, integrating the Kobali forces into the battle plan, a commotion at the entrance to the command center caught his attention. Tyler stumbled in, supported by Spica. Despite his obvious injuries, his eyes were alert and focused. "Counselor," Tyler said, his voice hoarse but urgent, "I need to help. The data I gathered—" Vex cut him off with a raised hand. "Ambassador Wilson, you've already done more than enough. You should be resting." Tyler shook his head, wincing at the movement. "There's no time. The Prilorians' flagship, it's the key. If we can take it out, their entire command structure will crumble." Spica supported Tyler as he made his way to the tactical display. "He's right, Father," she added. "The ion cannon, if we target their flagship, we could end this battle in one stroke." Vex considered for a moment, then nodded. "Very well. Admiral Hawthorne, are you receiving this?" The human admiral's hologram nodded. "Loud and clear, Counselor. We'll create an opening for your ion cannon. Just give the word." As the combined human Kobali fleet engaged the Prilorians, the battle above the planet intensified. Energy beams and missiles crisscrossed the void, while disabled ships from both sides drifted lifelessly through the chaos. In the command center, Tyler and Spica worked together, coordinating tactics and providing insights that merged human and Kobali strategy. Suddenly, alarms blared throughout the facility. A Kobali officer rushed to Vex, his face pale. "Counselor, we've detected Prilorians' life signs within the capital. They're heading for the cloaking control center." Tyler's head snapped up, realization dawning. "They must have deployed infiltrators before we jammed their communications. If they disable the cloaking device—" "The entire planet will be exposed," Spica finished, her voice tight with fear. Without hesitation, Tyler straightened, ignoring the pain that shot through his body. "I'll lead a team to defend the control center. I know their tactics. You're in no condition to fight, Vex interjected, but Tyler stood his ground. With all due respect, counselor, we don't have a choice. Every second we waste puts your people at greater risk. Spica stepped forward. I'm going with him. My knowledge of the facility could be crucial. Vex looked between the two of them, seeing the commitment in their eyes. Finally, he nodded. Go, but be careful, both of you. As Tyler and Spica raced through the corridors of the Kobali capital, the sounds of battle echoed in the distance. They encountered the first signs of the Prilorians' infiltrators near the entrance to the cloaking control center, scorch marks on the walls, and the bodies of fallen Kobali defenders. Tyler pulled a weapon from a fallen guard, checking its charge. Stay close, he told Spica, and be ready for anything. They pressed on, Tyler's combat training and Spica's intimate knowledge of the facility allowing them to outmaneuver the Prilorians. As they approached the main control room, the sounds of weapons fire intensified. They're trying to breach the door, Spica said, pointing to where a group of Prilorians were attempting to cut through the reinforced entrance. Tyler nodded, formulating a plan. We need to flank them. Is there another way in? Spica's eyes lit up. The maintenance shaft. This way. They circled around, using a hidden access point to enter the control room, just as the Prilorians began to break through the main door. Tyler and Spica worked in perfect synchronization, their movements a deadly dance as they caught the infiltrators in a crossfire. With the immediate threat neutralized, they turned their attention to the cloaking device. Spica's hands flew over the controls, reinforcing the system against further attacks. Tyler stood guard, his weapon trained on the damaged door. How long do you need? He asked, tension evident in his voice. Spica shook her head, not looking up from her work. I don't know. The system's been damaged. I'm doing what I can, but... Her words were cut off by a massive explosion that rocked the facility. Through the hole in the door, they could see more Prilorians' forces advancing. Tyler took up a defensive position, his eyes hardened. Whatever happens, we hold this room. The fate of your world depends on it. Spica nodded, redoubling her efforts on the cloaking device. As the next wave of Prilorians' attackers reached the threshold, Tyler opened fire. The control room became a battleground, with the future of the Kobali homeworld hanging in the balance. Above the planet, the space battle raged on. The human Kobali alliance fought with everything they had, but the outcome remained uncertain. In the heart of the Kobali capital, Tyler and Spica stood as the last line of defense against the Prilorians' threat. Their growing bond was put to the ultimate test as they faced overwhelming odds, each knowing that failure meant the end of everything they had fought for. The fate of two worlds rested on their shoulders as the battle reached its climax. The next few moments would determine not just the outcome of the war, but the future of human-Kobali relations and the blossoming connection between a human diplomat and a Kobali scientist. The control room erupted in chaos as more Prilorians' infiltrators poured through the breached door. Tyler's muscles ached as he fired his weapon in controlled bursts, dropping enemy after enemy. Beside him, Speaks worked feverishly at the console, her fingers flying across the alien interface. How much longer? Tyler shouted over the din of battle. Spica's voice was strained. The damage is extensive. I need more time. A blast of energy sizzled past Tyler's ear, leaving an acrid smell in its wake. He ducked behind a fallen piece of equipment, returning fire, the room filled with smoke and the sharp tang of ozone. In orbit above the planet, Admiral Hawthorne's voice cut through the static on the command channel. All ships execute pincer maneuver. Kobali vessels coordinate with human squadrons, Alpha and Beta. The space around the Kobali homeworld lit up with weapons fire as the combined human-Kobali fleet moved into position. Starships danced a deadly ballet, weaving between volleys of energy beams and missiles. On the planet's surface, Counselor Vex's eyes darted between tactical displays. Admiral, he said, his voice tight with tension, our ion cannon is ready. Transmitting targeting data now. Understood, Counselor. All ships, clear a path to the Prilorians' flagship. The massive Kobali weapon hummed to life, its barrel glowing with barely suppressed energy. A blinding beam lanced out from the planet's surface, cutting through the void of space. It struck the Prilorian's flagship dead center, electricity arcing across its hull. The enormous vessel's lights flickered and died, leaving it drifting helplessly. Back in the control room, Tyler felt the floor shake beneath his feet as the ion cannon fired. He used the momentary distraction to his advantage, leaning out from cover to take down 3 more Prilorians. As he did so, he caught sight of an infiltrator aiming directly at Spica. "Look out!" Tyler yelled, diving towards her. He felt a searing pain in his side as the energy blast grazed him, but his momentum carried him into Spica, knocking her clear. They tumbled to the ground as Tyler's return fire found its mark, dropping the Prilorian's attacker. Spica's eyes widened as she saw the burn on Tyler's side. Without hesitation, she pulled a small device from her belt and pressed it against the wound. A soft blue light pulsed, and Tyler felt a cooling sensation as the pain began to subside. "Thank you," he breathed, struggling to his feet. Spica nodded, her expression a mix of concern and grit. "We're not done yet." They worked side by side, Tyler providing cover fire while Spica rerouted systems and reinforced firewalls. The remaining Kobali technicians watched in awe as the human and Kobali moved in perfect sync, their actions complementing each other flawlessly. In the war room, Counselor Vex received an urgent communication from Admiral Hawthorne. "Counselor, the Prilorian's fleet is in disarray, but our ships have taken heavy damage. We need to end this now." Vex's face hardened as he made his decision. "Understood, Admiral. We're activating our EMP weapon. Have your ships withdraw to a safe distance." Warning klaxons blared throughout the Kobali capital as the electromagnetic pulse generator powered up. In space, human vessels broke off their attack runs, engines flaring as they retreated to the outer edges of the system. The pulse swept out from the Kobali homeworld in an invisible wave. Prilorian ships went dark, their systems overloaded by the massive surge of electromagnetic energy. But the pulse didn't discriminate. Kobali defenses flickered and died as well, leaving the planet temporarily vulnerable. In the control room, screens went black and consoles sparked. Tyler and Spica shared a look of understanding before turning their attention to the cloaking device. They worked furiously, combining their knowledge of human and Kobali technology to bypass damaged systems and reroute power. "Try it now," Tyler called out, his hands deep in a tangle of alien circuitry. Spica input a series of commands, and the cloaking device hummed back to life. A shimmer passed over the viewports as the planet once again vanished from sight. Their victory was short-lived. An alarm chimed on one of the few functioning monitors, displaying a long-range sensor reading. Spica's face paled as she interpreted the data. "Another Prilorian's fleet," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "Much larger than the first." Tyler's mind raced, assessing their options. His eyes fell on the disabled Prilorian ships drifting in orbit. An idea began to form. "Counselor Vex," he said into his communicator, "I have a plan, but it's going to require trust on both sides." In the war room, Vex listened intently as Tyler outlined his strategy. Use the captured Prilorian ships as Trojan horses, infiltrate the incoming fleet, and sabotage it from within. It was audacious, dangerous, and their best chance at survival. "It's risky," Vex said, his eyes meeting Spica's across the holographic display. "But we're out of alternatives. Spica, I'm assigning you to lead our part of this mission." Spica straightened, her voice firm. "I won't let you down, Father." As preparations for the counterattack began, tensions flared between the human and Kobali crew members assigned to the mission. Cultural misunderstandings and years of isolation bred mistrust and confusion. Tyler watched as a human technician argued with his Kobali counterpart over the best way to modify the captured Prilorian's communications array. The human's frustration was evident in his clenched fists and raised voice, while the Kobali's antenna quivered with impossibly strong irritation. "Enough," Tyler said, stepping between them. "We don't have time for this. Show me what you're working on." He listened to both sides, asking questions and finding common ground. Slowly, the two technicians began to work together, their combined expertise yielding better results than either could have achieved alone. Across the hangar, Spica was dealing with a similar situation. A Kobali security officer was reluctant to accept orders from a human tactical specialist. Spica pulled them both aside, explaining the importance of cooperation and the unique strengths each brought to the team. As the hour of departure approached, Tyler and Spica found a moment alone amidst the controlled chaos of the launch preparations. The stress of the past few days showed on both their faces, but there was also a newfound respect and understanding between them. "Ready for this?" Tyler asked, checking the seal on his environment suit. Spica nodded, her expression determined. "Ready?" And Tyler, "Thank you for everything you've done for my people." Tyler smiled, feeling the weight of responsibility on his shoulders. "We're in this together now. Let's make it count." They boarded the captured Prilorians vessel, joined by their mixed team of humans and Kobali. As the ship's engines hummed to life, Tyler took his place at the helm. Spica stood beside him, coordinating with the rest of the strike force. The hangar doors opened, revealing the star-studded blackness of space. In the distance, they could see the first signs of the approaching Prilorians armada, a cloud of weapon flashes and engine flares that grew larger by the second. Tyler took a deep breath, his hands steady on the controls. "All ships, prepare for launch. Operation Trojan Horse is go." The captured Prilorians vessels rose from the Kobali homeworld, leaving the safety of the cloaking field behind. As they accelerated towards the incoming threat, the fate of two worlds rested on the shoulders of this unlikely alliance. The true test of human-Kobali cooperation was about to begin. The true test of human-Kobali cooperation was about to unfold in the vastness of space. As the captured Prilorians vessels accelerated towards the incoming armada, Tyler's hands tightened on the controls. Beside him, Spica's eyes were fixed on the tactical display, tracking the movements of the massive enemy fleet. "All teams, maintain radio silence," Tyler instructed over the secure channel. "Approach vector looks clear. Stay in formation and follow my lead." The strike force advanced, their ships blending seamlessly with the chaos of the retreating Prilorians vessels. As they neared the outer perimeter of the enemy fleet, a tense silence fell over the bridge. A harsh voice crackled over the comms. "Unidentified vessels, transmit authorization codes immediately." Tyler exchanged a quick glance with Spica before activating the stolen transponder. 10 seconds ticked by as they waited for a response. "Authorization confirmed. Proceed to docking bay 17 for decontamination and debriefing." Collective sighs of relief rippled through the strike team. They had passed the first hurdle, but the real challenge was just beginning. As they approached the massive Prilorians command ship, Tyler marveled at its size. The vessel dwarfed anything in the human or Kobali fleets, its hull dripping with weapon emplacements and sensor arrays. "Remember," Spica addressed the team, her voice steady despite the pressure. "Once we're aboard, we split into two groups. Tyler will lead Alpha Team to the engine room. I'll take Beta Team to the communications center. Move fast, stay quiet, and if you're compromised, use the emergency beacon." The docking procedure went smoothly, the Prilorians crew none the wiser to the true nature of their new arrivals. As the airlock cycled, Tyler performed one last check of his equipment. The weight of the mission pressed down on him, but he pushed the anxiety aside, focusing on the task at hand. "Good luck," he said to Spica, their eyes meeting briefly before the airlock doors hissed open. The two teams moved swiftly through the corridors of the Prilorian ship, using stolen security passes to bypass checkpoints. Tyler led his group deeper into the bowels of the vessel, following the pulsing power conduits that would lead them to the engine room. As they rounded a corner, they came face to face with a Prilorian security patrol. Time seemed to slow as both groups registered the presence of the other. Tyler reacted first, launching himself at the nearest guard. The corridor erupted into a frenzy of close-quarters combat. Tyler ducked under a wild swing, using his smaller size to his advantage against the bulkier Prilorians. He drove his elbow into his opponent's midsection, following up with a quick strike to the throat. Around him, his team engaged in similar struggles, their training and desperation giving them an edge. In the aftermath of the skirmish, Tyler surveyed his team. They were breathing hard, some sporting cuts and bruises, but all were still standing. The Prilorians' guards lay unconscious at their feet. "We need to move," Tyler said, gesturing down the corridor. "They'll notice these guys are missing soon enough." Meanwhile, Spica's team encountered their own challenges as they approached the communications center. The area was heavily guarded, with multiple security checkpoints blocking their path. Spica's mind raced, analyzing their options. Her gaze fell on a nearby maintenance panel, and an idea formed. Quickly, she outlined her plan to the team. Working efficiently, they reprogrammed a set of maintenance drones, transforming the small machines into electromagnetic pulse emitters. With a nod from Spica, they released the swarm. The effect was immediate and dramatic. Alarms blared as systems throughout the sector began to malfunction. Prylorian's guards rushed to contain the chaos, leaving their posts unattended. Seizing the opportunity, Spica led her team through the now unguarded checkpoints and into the heart of the communications center. They worked swiftly, uploading the virus that would sow confusion throughout the Prylorian's fleet. As the last lines of code were entered, Spica allowed herself a moment of satisfaction. "Virus uploaded. Let's move to the extraction point." But their victory was short-lived. As both teams converged on their planned escape route, they found their path blocked by emergency bulkheads. "They're initiating a lockdown," Tyler said, his voice tight with urgency. "We need to find another way out." Separated from the rest of their teams, Tyler and Spica found themselves trapped in a narrow maintenance corridor. The sounds of approaching Prylorian soldiers echoed from both directions. Tyler's eyes darted around, searching for an escape. His gaze landed on a small hatch labeled in Prylorian script. "There!" he shouted, pointing to the emergency escape pod. They sprinted towards the pod, the thundering footsteps of their pursuers growing louder. As they reached the hatch, Tyler wrenched it open, revealing a cramped interior clearly designed for a single occupant. Without hesitation, Tyler grabbed Spica by the shoulders and pushed her into the pod. "Go!" he yelled, his face a mask of purpose. Spica's eyes widened in shock. "Tyler, no! There has to be another way!" But Tyler was already sealing the hatch, his fingers flying over the external controls. "The mission comes first. Your people need you, Spica." As the pod systems hummed to life, Spica fought to override the launch sequence. Through the small viewport, she could see Tyler turn to face the oncoming Prylorian soldiers, weapon raised. The pod rocketed away from the ship, leaving Tyler behind. Spica pressed her hands against the cold glass, watching in horror as explosions began to blossom across the Prylorian's vessel's hull. Tears stung her eyes as the realization of Tyler's sacrifice hit her. But there was no time for grief. As her pod hurtled through space, Spica steeled herself for what was to come. She had to ensure that Tyler's actions weren't in vain. Back on the Kobali homeworld, the combined forces watched in awe as the Prylorian's fleet fell into disarray. Ships collided, weapons fired at random, and conflicting orders spread chaos through their ranks. Counselor Vex's voice cut through the command center. "Launch rescue operations immediately. Priority 1 is retrieving our operatives." As Spica's pod was tractored aboard a Kobali rescue ship, she hit the ground running. "We need to go back," she insisted, her voice hoarse with emotion. "There are still team members out there. Tyler." Admiral Hawthorne's voice crackled over the comms. "All ships, engage the Prylorian's fleet. Press our advantage while we have it." The space around the Kobali homeworld erupted into renewed battle. Human and Kobali ships darted between the confused Prylorian's vessels, exploiting gaps in their defenses and striking with precision. Amidst the chaos, alarms blared in the Kobali command center. A text voice rose above the din. "Counselor, we're detecting a Prylorian ship on a collision course with the planet." All eyes turned to the main view screen, where a badly damaged Prylorian's vessel was plummeting towards the Kobali homeworld. As it entered the atmosphere, the ship began to break apart, leaving a trail of debris in its wake. "Life signs?" Vex demanded, his antennae quivering with tension. The tech's fingers flew over his console. One faint life sign detected. It's human." Spica's heart leapt into her throat. Without waiting for orders, she sprinted towards the hangar bay. "Prepare a rescue ship," she shouted to the stunned crew. "We're going after that survivor." As she strapped herself into the pilot's seat of a sleek Kobali atmospheric craft, Spica's mind raced. Could it really be Tyler? Had he somehow survived the destruction of the Prylorian ship? With a burst of engines, Spica's rescue craft shot into the sky, climbing rapidly to intercept the falling wreckage. As she approached the descending debris field, her sensors locked onto the faint life sign. "Hold on," she whispered, more to herself than the unknown survivor. "I'm coming for you." The rescue ship weaved through the storm of falling metal, each piece of debris a potential disaster. Spica's hands were steady on the controls as she guided the craft closer to her target. The planet's surface loomed ever larger below, a constant reminder of the deadly consequences of failure. As she closed in on the life sign, Spica caught a glimpse of a figure tumbling amid the wreckage. Her breath caught in her throat as she recognized the unmistakable shape of a human environmental suit. With time running out and the ground rushing up to meet them, Spica prepared for the most crucial maneuver of her life. The fate of two worlds, the future of human-Kobali relations, and the life of someone who had come to mean more to her than she had ever expected, all hung in the balance as she pushed her ship to its limits. Limits as she pushed forward, closing the distance to the tumbling figure. The rescue ship's sensors locked onto the environmental suit, confirming what Spica had hoped against hope. It was Tyler. "Kraz, I need you on the tractor controls," Spica called over her shoulder. "We've got one shot at this." The skilled Kobali pilot slid into position, his fingers dancing across the control panel. "Ready on your mark, Commander." Spica's eyes never left the view screen as she maneuvered the ship closer to the debris field. Pieces of the destroyed Prylorian's vessel streaked past, each a potential threat to their own craft. "Now, Kraz!" A shimmering beam of energy shot out from their ship, enveloping the area around Tyler. The tractor beam strained against the chaotic forces of the plummeting wreckage, creating a pocket of relative stability. "I can't hold it for long," Kraz warned, his voice tight with concentration. Spica didn't hesitate. She activated the ship's airlock and launched herself into the narrow corridor. The outer hatch hissed open, and she found herself face to face with the swirling maelstrom of the upper atmosphere. Tyler hung suspended in the tractor beam, mere meters away. His environmental suit was battered and scorched, but his faceplate remained intact. Spica could see his eyes, wide with a mixture of pain and relief. She reached out, straining against the safety tether that anchored her to the ship. Their fingertips brushed, then clasped. With a surge of strength, Spica pulled Tyler towards her, into the relative safety of the airlock. As soon as they were clear, Kraz disengaged the tractor beam. The ship shuddered as debris rained against its hull, but Spica paid it no mind. Her focus was entirely on Tyler. She unsealed his helmet, revealing a face pale with shock and streaked with blood from a gash on his forehead. "Hold on," she murmured, her medical training taking over. She reached for the emergency med kit, withdrawing a Kobali biostabilizer. Tyler's eyes fluttered as she applied the device to his chest. "Spica," he rasped, his voice barely audible. "The mission, did we—" "Shh," she soothed, watching the biostabilizers read out intently. "We're not out of this yet. Save your strength." As the rescue ship streaked back towards the Kobali capital, Spica's communicator crackled to life. Admiral Hawthorne's voice cut through the static, tension evident in every word. "All ships, this is Hawthorne. The Prylorians are massing for a final assault. They're forming some kind of superweapon. We need every available craft to intercept." Spica's heart raced. They were so close to safety, but the battle wasn't over. She glanced at Tyler, his condition stabilized but still critical. "Kraz, get us to the medical center as fast as you can," she ordered, then immediately rejoin the fleet. The Kobali pilot acknowledged, pushing the engines to their limit. As they approached the sprawling medical complex, Spica saw the sky light up with weapons fire. The battle for the Kobali homeworld had reached its crescendo. Medical teams swarmed the ship as soon as it touched down. Spica briefed them on Tyler's condition as they transferred him to a hover stretcher. She watched as they whisked him away, her chest tight with an emotion she couldn't quite name. There was no time to dwell on it. Spica sprinted towards the command center, her mind already shifting to the tactical situation above. As she burst through the doors, she was met with a scene of controlled chaos. Counselor Vex stood at the center of the room, his antennae twitching as he absorbed information from multiple sources. He turned as Spica approached, his expression grim. "Commander, we've activated the planetary defense grid," he reported. "But the Prilorian's weapon, it may be beyond our capabilities to stop." Spica studied the holographic display, taking in the positions of the human and Kobali fleets. They were spread thin, struggling to contain the Prilorian's forces that had broken through their lines. A new voice cut through the command center's chatter. "This is Lieutenant Jack Harper. I'm volunteering for a strike mission against the Prilorian's weapon." All eyes turned to the communications array. Harper's voice continued, steady despite the gravity of his proposal. "My stealth fighter is equipped with an experimental EMP device. If I can get close enough, I might be able to disrupt their energy matrix." Admiral Hawthorne's voice joined the discussion. "Harper, that's a one-way trip. The odds of survival—" "With respect, sir," Harper interrupted, "we're out of options. I'm already en route." Spica watched the young pilot's signal as it detached from the main fleet, streaking towards the heart of the Prilorian's formation. She felt a surge of admiration for Harper's bravery, tinged with a sharp pang of worry. Suddenly, a commotion at the entrance to the command center drew her attention. Tyler stumbled through the doors, supported by a medical droid. His face was ashen, but his eyes burned with perseverance. "Tyler!" Spica exclaimed, rushing to his side. "You should be in the medical bay." He shook his head, grimacing with the effort. "No time. I heard about Harper's mission. I think I can help." Spica helped Tyler to a nearby console. His fingers, trembling slightly, flew over the controls. "The EMP device," he explained, his voice strained. "I can modify its frequency to better penetrate the Prilorian shields, but we need to get the information to Harper." Counselor Vex stepped forward, his earlier skepticism replaced by urgent cooperation. "We can use our quantum entanglement communicator. It should cut through any interference." As Tyler worked, Spica relayed his modifications to Harper. The young pilot's voice came back, tense but grateful. "Understood. Implementing changes now. I'm approaching the target." The command center fell silent as Harper's signal disappeared into the Prilorian's formation. Seconds stretched into an eternity as they waited for any sign of success or failure. Then, without warning, a massive burst of electromagnetic energy bloomed on their screens. The Prilorian ships nearest to the detonation point went dark, their systems overloaded by the supercharged EMP. A cheer went up from the assembled staff, but Spica's eyes remained fixed on the tactical display. The Prilorian's superweapon was breaking apart, secondary explosions rippling through its structure. And there, emerging from the chaos, was a single, battered fighter. "This is Harper," came the weary but triumphant voice. "Mission accomplished, requesting immediate pickup." As the remains of the Prilorian's fleet began to scatter, Spica turned to Tyler. He sagged against the console, the last of his strength spent. Their eyes met, a silent communication passing between them. "Get him back to medical," Spica ordered, her voice softer than she intended. As the medical droid guided Tyler away, she straightened, addressing Counselor Vex. "Sir, with your permission, I'd like to coordinate our pursuit of the retreating Prilorian ships." Vex nodded, a new respect evident in his gaze. "Granted, Commander, and thank you, all of you. It seems we have much to discuss about the future of human-Kobali relations." Spica allowed herself a small smile as she turned back to the tactical display. The immediate crisis was over, but she knew that the real work was just beginning. As she began issuing orders to the combined fleet, her thoughts strayed momentarily to Tyler and to the uncertain path that lay ahead for both their peoples. Worlds for both their peoples. As the last Prilorian ships vanished into the vastness of space, an eerie calm settled over the Kobali homeworld. The silence was soon broken by the whir of medical transports and the hum of reconstruction drones. Spica stood at the command center's panoramic window, watching as the planet below slowly came back to life. Her attention was drawn to a sleek medical shuttle touching down near the capital's primary care facility. She knew Tyler was aboard, his condition still critical. Without a word to her fellow officers, Spica strode out of the command center, her steps purposeful as she made her way to the medical complex. The advanced Kabali facility was a marvel of bioengineering, its walls pulsing with bioluminescent diagnostic displays. Spica found Tyler in a private room, surrounded by a team of both human and Kabali medical professionals. At their center stood Chief Healer Zara, her forearms manipulating a holographic representation of Tyler's internal systems. "Commander," Zara acknowledged Spica's presence without looking up. "We've stabilized his condition, but the next few hours will be crucial." Spica moved closer to the bed, her eyes fixed on Tyler's pale face. "What can I do?" Zara's upper set of eyes met Spica's gaze. "Stay with him. Our research suggests that familiar presences can aid in human recovery." Over the next several days, Spica divided her time between overseeing the planet's recovery efforts and sitting vigil at Tyler's bedside. She watched as Zara and her team employed an intricate dance of human and Kabali medical techniques, their movements as precise as any battle maneuver. On the fifth day, as Spica was reviewing reconstruction reports on her datapad, a soft groan from the bed caught her attention. Tyler's eyes fluttered open, confusion evident in his gaze. "Spica," his voice was barely a whisper. She leaned in, relief washing over her. "I'm here, Tyler. You're safe." His hand reached for hers, fingers intertwining. The simple gesture spoke volumes, conveying a depth of emotion that surprised them both. Spica felt a warmth spread through her chest, a feeling she couldn't quite name but knew was significant. The moment was interrupted by the arrival of Counselor Vex, his antennae twitching with what Spica now recognized as curiosity. He observed the scene before him, his expression unreadable. "Commander, a word?" Vex gestured to the corridor outside. Once they were alone, Vex spoke in low tones. "I've been watching your interactions with the human. It's clear there's a connection forming." Spica tensed, prepared to defend her actions, but Vex held up a hand. "I'm not here to reprimand you. In fact, I believe this development could be beneficial for both our peoples. Tyler's actions during the battle have shifted my perspective on human-Kabali relations." Before Spica could respond, a commotion at the end of the hallway drew their attention. Admiral Hawthorne strode towards them, flanked by a team of human engineers and Kabali technicians. "Counselor, Commander," Hawthorne greeted them. "I hope I'm not interrupting. I wanted to inform you that we've established a temporary human base near the capital. We're calling it Operation Bridge Builder." Vex's antennae perked up with interest. "An apt name, Admiral. I look forward to seeing what our combined efforts can achieve." As the days passed, Tyler's recovery progressed steadily. Spica found herself spending more time by his side, their conversations ranging from battle tactics to personal histories. The growing intimacy between them did not go unnoticed by the medical staff or visiting officials, but in the wake of the recent crisis, such a development seemed almost natural. 2 weeks after the battle, Tyler was well enough to attend a strategic planning session. He sat at the conference table, still pale, but with a determined set to his jaw. As Admiral Hawthorne outlined the progress of Operation Bridge Builder, Tyler leaned forward. "Admiral, Counselor, I have a proposal," he began. All eyes turned to him. "The Prilorian's technology we salvaged from the battle. What if we formed a joint human-Kabali research team to study it? We could develop new defensive systems, maybe even medical breakthroughs." Vex and Hawthorne exchanged glances. "An intriguing idea," Vex mused. "What would you call this initiative?" Tyler thought for a moment. "Project Synthesis, because it's about bringing our two species' knowledge together." Hawthorne nodded approvingly. "I like it. Counselor?" Vex's antennae waved in what Spica now recognized as excitement. "Approved. Commander Spica, I'd like you to lead the Kabali research team." As the meeting adjourned, Spica felt a surge of anticipation. The path ahead was uncertain, but for the first time, it felt like humans and Kabali were truly walking it together. The following week brought another milestone in human-Kabali relations. A joint ceremony was held to honor Jack Harper, the human pilot whose bravery had been instrumental in defeating the Prilorian superweapon. Spica watched as Vex personally pinned a Kabali military decoration to Harper's chest, the first time such an honor had been bestowed upon a human. As the applause died down, Harper approached Spica and Tyler. "I hear you two are heading up Project Synthesis," he said. "Any chance you could use a pilot with first-hand experience of Prilorian's tech?" Before they could respond, alarms blared throughout the complex. Admiral Hawthorne's voice came over the comm system. "All personnel to battle stations. We're detecting Prilorian's activity in nearby star systems." The celebration quickly transformed into a strategic meeting. Hawthorne and Vex stood before a holographic star map outlining potential Prilorian's incursion routes. "We need a rapid response fleet," Hawthorne argued, "something that can protect both human and Kobali interests in the region." Vex nodded. "Agreed, but we'll need new technology to combat the Prilorian's threat effectively." Tyler, who had been studying the star map intently, spoke up. "What if we adapted the planetary cloaking technology used to hide the Kobali homeworld? If we could scale it down, we might be able to make individual ships or even away teams undetectable to Prilorian sensors." The room fell silent as the implications sank in. Then, almost in unison, human and Kobali military leaders began firing questions and suggestions. As the meeting broke into smaller working groups, Spica found herself standing next to Tyler. "Looks like Project Synthesis just got a lot more interesting," she said. Tyler grinned, the expression lighting up his still pale face. "I have a feeling this is just the beginning." Outside the conference room, the Kobali capital hummed with activity. Human scientists and diplomats mingled with Kobali citizens, their interactions a mix of curiosity and occasional confusion. In a nearby lab, a team of linguists and programmers from both species huddled around a console, working to refine the universal translation technology that had once caused so much misunderstanding. As the sun set on another day of this new era of cooperation, a small Kobali scout ship rose from its launch pad. To the naked eye, it was clearly visible against the darkening sky. But on every sensor screen in the vicinity, there was nothing but empty space. In the ship's cockpit, a human pilot and a Kobali engineer exchanged triumphant glances. The test of the new stealth technology had been a resounding success. But their celebration was short-lived. As they began their descent, a priority alert flashed across their screens. Long-range sensors had detected a massive energy signature at the edge of the star system. The pilot's face paled as he read the initial analysis. "Is that what I think it is?" The Kobali engineer's antenna drooped in confirmation. "A Prilorian's wormhole generator, large enough to bring an entire invasion fleet." As they raced back to base, the enormity of the situation sank in. The fledgling human Kobali alliance was about to face its greatest test yet. In command centers and research labs across the planet, alarms began to sound. The battle for survival was just the beginning. In fact, it seemed it had only just begun. The alarms blaring throughout the complex fell silent as Admiral Hawthorne's voice came over the comm system once more. "All senior staff report to the primary war room immediately." Tyler and Spica exchanged a glance before hurrying down the corridor. The celebration of human Kobali cooperation had vanished, replaced by a palpable tension that hung in the air like a storm about to break. As they entered the war room, they found Admiral Hawthorne and Counselor Vex already hunched over a holographic display. The star map flickered with ominous red markers, each representing a potential Prilorian's incursion point. "What's the situation, Admiral?" Tyler asked, his voice steady despite the anxiety coursing through him. Hawthorne looked up, his face grim. "Long-range sensors have detected a massive energy signature at the edge of the Kobali star system. Initial analysis suggests it's a Prilorian's wormhole generator." The room fell silent as the implications sank in. Spica's antennae twitched, a sign of her growing concern. "How much time do we have?" Vex's multifaceted eyes blinked rapidly. "Hours at most. We need a plan, and quickly." As if on cue, the door slid open, admitting a human pilot and Kobali engineer. Their faces were flushed with a mix of excitement and fear. "Sirs," the pilot began, "we've just completed a test run of the new stealth technology. It was a success, but—" The Kobali engineer finished the thought. "We detected the wormhole generator during our flight. It's even larger than our initial estimates suggested." Tyler's mind raced, possibilities and strategies flickering through his thoughts. He stepped forward, drawing all eyes to him. "We need more information. If that generator is as big as they say, It could bring an entire invasion fleet through at once. Hawthorne nodded. Agreed, but how do we get close enough without being detected? The stealth ship, Tyler said, his voice gaining strength. We use it to gather intelligence on the generator. I'll pilot it myself. Spica's head snapped towards him, her eyes wide with concern. Tyler, you've barely recovered. It's too dangerous. He met her gaze, seeing the worry there, but also understanding. That's exactly why it has to be me. I have experience with both human and Prylorian's tech. We can't afford any mistakes. Vex's antenna waved thoughtfully. It's a sound strategy, but Commander Spica is right about the risk. Then I'll go with him, Spica said, her tone brooking no argument. As co-pilot and science officer, between the two of us, we'll have the best chance of success. Hawthorne and Vex exchanged a look, years of military experience passing between them in an instant. Finally, Vex nodded. Very well. Prepare for immediate launch. The rest of us will begin mobilizing our combined fleet. As Tyler and Spica hurried to the hangar bay, the Kobali homeworld erupted into a flurry of activity. Fighters launched, capital ships moved into defensive formations, and the planetary defense grid hummed to life. In the hangar, they found the prototype stealth ship waiting. Its sleek, dark hull seemed to absorb the light around it. A nearby technician handed them data pads with the latest intelligence. We've named her Shadow Dancer, the technician said with a hint of pride. She's the best we've got. Bring her back in one piece. Tyler and Spica climbed aboard, the cockpit sealing around them with a soft hiss. As Tyler began the pre-flight checklist, Spica's fingers danced over the science station controls. Stealth systems online, she reported. We're invisible to all known detection methods. Tyler nodded, feeling the familiar surge of adrenaline as the engines came to life. Here we go, he murmured. Shadow Dancer, you're clear for launch. The ship rose silently, slipping out of the hangar and into the star-filled sky. As they accelerated towards the edge of the system, Tyler glanced at Spica. Her face was illuminated by the glow of her console, tenacity etched in every line. We've trained for this, he said softly. We can do it. Spica met his eyes, a small smile playing at the corners of her mouth. Together, she agreed. As they approached the coordinates of the energy signature, the true scale of the Prylorian's wormhole generator became apparent. It was a massive structure, easily the size of a small moon. Tendrils of energy crackled around its surface, bending the very fabric of space-time. By the ancestors, Spica breathed, her eyes wide as she took in the readings. It's incredible. Tyler maneuvered the Shadow Dancer closer, using the generator's gravitational distortions to mask their approach. Beginning detailed scans, he reported. Let's see what we're dealing with. As data streamed across their screens, a flicker of movement caught Tyler's eye. His heart sank as he realized what it meant. Spica, he said, his voice tight, we've got company. Through the swirling energies of the wormhole, the first Prylorian ships began to emerge. Sleek and predatory, they moved with a purpose that sent a chill down Tyler's spine. It's starting, Spica said, her voice barely above a whisper. The invasion. Tyler's hands tightened on the controls. We need to warn the others, but first we need to find a way to stop this. As they watched, more and more Prylorian ships poured through the wormhole. The Shadow Dancer's sensors worked overtime, gathering every scrap of data they could. Suddenly, Tyler's eyes widened. Wait a second, he muttered, leaning closer to his display. Spica, look at this frequency analysis. She moved to his side, her antennae twitching as she studied the readout. It's similar to the communication frequency we exploited in the last battle, she said, realization dawning in her voice. Tyler nodded, excitement building. Exactly. If we could generate a precisely calibrated electromagnetic pulse, we could disrupt the wormhole, Spica finished. Trap the Prylorian's fleet on the other side. Their eyes met, a spark of hope igniting between them. But before they could celebrate, alarms blared throughout the cockpit. Stealth system fluctuation, Spica cried, her fingers flying over the controls. We were visible for 2.3 seconds. Tyler's stomach dropped as he saw a squad of Prylorian's interceptors break formation, heading straight for their position. Hang on, he growled, throwing the shadow dancer into a series of evasive maneuvers. This is going to get rough. As they dodged and weaved through the gravitational eddies surrounding the wormhole, Tyler opened a secure channel to the Kobali homeworld. This is Shadow Dancer, he said, his voice strained with concentration. We've got critical intel on the wormhole generator. Transmitting data now? The response came moments later, Admiral Hawthorne's voice crackling through the comm. Received, Shadow Dancer. What's your situation? Bit busy at the moment, sir, Tyler replied, narrowly avoiding a barrage of Prylorian's energy weapons. We've been spotted, attempting to shake pursuit. Understood, Hawthorne said. We're analyzing the data now. Hold on as long as you can. Help is on the way. As the communication cut off, Tyler glanced at Spica. Her face was set in steadfast perseverance as she worked to stabilize the stealth system. Any ideas? He asked. Spica's eyes darted to the swirling vortex of the wormhole. Just one, she said, but you're not going to like it. Tyler followed her gaze, understanding immediately. The gravitational distortions, he said. If we get close enough, we might shake them off, Spica finished. But the risk is better than the alternative, Tyler said, already adjusting their course. Hold on tight. The shadow dancer plunged towards the edge of the wormhole, alarms blaring as the ship's systems struggled against the intense gravitational forces. Behind them, the Prylorians' interceptors gave chase, their shots going wide as the distortions threw off their targeting systems. Tyler's world narrowed to his controls and the viewport, his every sense attuned to the ship's movements. Beside him, Spica called out readings, her voice a lifeline in the chaos. With a final gut-wrenching turn, they broke free of the wormhole's influence. The Prylorian ships, unable to match the maneuver, were caught in the gravitational eddies and spun away. For a moment, elation filled the cockpit, but it was short-lived. Tyler, Spica said, her voice tight. The propulsion system is damaged. We're stranded. As the reality of their situation sank in, Tyler and Spica shared a look of unshakable focus. They were alone, damaged and facing an entire invasion fleet. But they weren't beaten yet. We still have power, Tyler said, his mind already racing with possibilities. And we're right next to their wormhole generator. Spica's antennae perked up as she caught his train of thought. If we can't get the intel back to base, she said slowly, maybe we can act on it ourselves. Tyler nodded, a fierce grin spreading across his face. Exactly. Let's see what kind of damage we can do with a localized electromagnetic pulse. As they began to reconfigure the Shadow Dancer's systems for their improvised attack, the wormhole flared with renewed energy. The first wave of the Prylorians' invasion fleet emerged in full force, a sight that would have struck terror into the heart of any world. But on board the small, crippled stealth ship, a human and a Kobali worked with single-minded focus. The fate of two worlds hung in the balance, and they were the only ones in a position to tip the scales. The true test of the human-Kobali alliance was about to begin. The Shadow Dancer's systems hummed with newfound purpose, as Tyler and Spica worked in perfect synchronization, their fingers flying over the controls. The once quiet cockpit now buzzed with activity, the air thick with tension and the acrid smell of overheating circuits. Rerouting power from life support, Spica announced, her antenna twitching with concentration. We'll have about 15 minutes of breathable air left. Tyler nodded, his eyes never leaving the makeshift electromagnetic pulse generator they'd cobbled together from spare parts and sheer desperation. It'll have to be enough. How's the targeting system? Calibrated and locked on the wormhole generator, Spica replied, her multifaceted eyes reflecting the pulsing red warning lights. But Tyler, the margin for error is significant. He turned to her, taking in her determined expression, the set of her jaw that spoke of unwavering willpower. Without a word, he reached out and took her hand, their fingers intertwining. For a moment, the chaos around them faded away, leaving only the two of them, connected by touch and shared purpose. Together, Tyler said softly, echoing their earlier exchange. Spica's grip tightened. Together, she agreed, her voice steady despite the tremor in her antenna. With their free hands, they reached for the activation switch. A deep breath, a shared glance, and they flipped it in unison. The shadow dancer shuddered as if alive, every system straining to channel power into the jury-rigged pulse emitter. A high-pitched whine filled the air, building to a crescendo that set their teeth on edge. Tyler's fingers tightening on the controls as he fought to keep the ship steady in the face of the immense energy output. Suddenly, a blinding flash erupted from the ship, so bright that even their polarized viewports couldn't fully compensate. Tyler and Spica instinctively shielded their eyes, their joined hands the only anchor in a sea of white. For a heart-stopping moment, nothing happened. The pulse dissipated into space, leaving behind an eerie silence. Tyler's breath caught in his throat, a leaden weight settling in his stomach. Had they failed? Then, with a sound like reality itself tearing apart, the wormhole began to destabilize. The swirling vortex of energy twisted and writhed, its once orderly patterns dissolving into chaos. Prylorian ships caught in the maelstrom were torn apart, their hulls crumpling like paper as gravitational forces beyond comprehension ripped them to shreds. The wormhole generator, a technological marvel that had seemed invincible mere moments ago, now groaned under the strain. Arcs of energy danced across its surface, growing more erratic by the second. Tyler and Spica watched in awe as the massive structure began to buckle, overwhelmed by the very forces it was designed to control. With a final, defiant roar, the generator exploded. The shockwave hit the shadow dancer like a physical blow, sending the small ship tumbling end over end through space. Tyler and Spica, still strapped into their seats, grunted with the impact. Warning klaxons blared as system after system went offline. "Hull integrity at 62%, Spica shouted over the din, her fingers dancing over what remained of their control interface. "We're caught in the Kobali homeworld's gravity well." Tyler gritted his teeth, fighting against the G-forces to reach the manual controls. "Rerouting all remaining power to thrusters and life support. We're going in hot." The shadow dancer streaked through space, a tiny speck against the vast backdrop of stars and the looming presence of the Kobali homeworld. As they entered the atmosphere, the ship's hull began to glow red-hot, the friction creating a fiery cocoon around them. Inside the cockpit, sweat beaded on Tyler's brow as he wrestled with the controls. "Spica, I need a landing zone." Her antennae twitched rapidly as she scanned the rapidly approaching surface. "There," she cried, pointing to a vast expanse of shimmering crystal formations. "The Whispering Forest. Its crystalline structure should help absorb the impact." Tyler adjusted their trajectory, aiming for the sea of glittering spires. The shadow dancer plowed into the crystal forest, each impact sending shudders through the ship's frame. Crystal shards exploded around them in a dazzling display, the bioluminescent structures pulsing with energy as they shattered. With a final bone-jarring crash, the shadow dancer came to rest in a clearing. For a moment, all was still. Then, with a hiss of equalizing pressure, the cockpit canopy cracked open. Tyler and Spica emerged, stumbling slightly as they set foot on solid ground. They were bruised, battered, and breathing heavily, but alive. Around them, the crystal forest pulsed with soft, multicolored light, each shard seeming to resonate with the distant sounds of battle still echoing from orbit. They turned as one to look at the sky, where flashes of weapons fire could be seen even through the planet's atmosphere. Spica's hand found Tyler's again, their fingers interlacing without conscious thought. "Do you think it worked?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Tyler squeezed her hand gently. "It had to," he replied, his eyes never leaving the celestial battlefield above them. "We gave them a fighting chance. Now it's up to Hawthorne and the others." As if in response to his words, a brilliant flash lit up the sky, followed by another and another. The pulses of light took on a rhythm, a strangely beautiful dance of destruction and victory. "The ion cannon," Spica breathed, her antennae quivering with excitement. "Counselor Vex must have brought it online." They watched in awe as the tide of battle visibly turned. The once organized formations of Prylorian ships broke apart, scattering in the face of the combined human-Kobali assault. Explosions bloomed like deadly flowers among the stars, each one representing a blow struck against the invaders. As the last echoes of combat faded, a new sound reached their ears. The whine of engines grew louder, and soon a search and rescue ship descended into the clearing. The hatch opened to reveal a mixed crew of humans and Kabali, their faces alight with the joy of victory and relief at finding the heroes of the hour alive. Tyler and Spica stood hand in hand, backlit by the pulsing glow of the crystal forest, as their rescuers approached. They had survived, they had triumphed, and they had done it together. But as they shared a glance, both knew that this was not an ending, but a beginning. The true work of forging lasting peace between their peoples was just starting, and they would face it as they had faced every challenge so far, side by side.
You have reached the end of the story. If you enjoyed this story and want to support us, please leave a like and subscribe to our channel, and for every comment that says 88, I will heart every single one of them. Thank you for your time.